The time is now 9:33. Welcome to the July 21st Digital Jekyll Island Authority meeting. Due to the current COVID pandemic, special remote procedures will be in place for this meeting. These procedures attempt to allow for full board and public participation using audio only. Anyone with web access should be able to hear the meeting streaming on our YouTube channel. My name is Michelle Webb, and I will act as the moderator and introduce today's meeting. This meeting is streamed audio only on our YouTube channel. Meeting documents and public comments are available at the JekyllIsland.com Jekyll Island Authority Board of Directors webpage. Comments received before Sunday, the 19th of July at 5 p.m. were distributed to the board in advance of today's meeting and will become posted to the website and part of the public record. We have received one public comment. Public comments received after Sunday, the 19th at 5 p.m. and until the evening of today at 5 p.m. will be distributed after the meeting and will also become part of the public record and be posted to the website. Board members, please note, voting will be conducted by roll call or objection as needed. Please do not use your speakerphone. Please state your name every time you speak. Please mute your phone when you're not speaking. I will now take the roll call for today's attendance. Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson, Jr.
Here.
Robert Bob W. Kruger.
Here.
William Bill H. Gross.
Here.
Mr. Hugh Trips Tollison.
Here.
Miss Joy Birch Meeks.
Here.
Dr. L.C. Buster Evans.
Here.
Commissioner Mark Williams.
Here.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Here.
Mr. Dale Atkins. Mr. Dale Atkins. Thank you. I will now turn the meeting over to Chairman Joe Wilkinson.
Thank you, Michelle, very, very much, and to the staff and to Michelle and the staff for putting this together. Very much appreciate it. There are a lot of moving parts. We have a quorum, and we will proceed. Mr. Kruger, you do not have a report for preservation and conservation, as I understand.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. The Historic Preservation and Conservation Committee has no report today.
Okay, then we will move to the Finance Committee. Mr. Gross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this point in time, I'd like to call Marjorie Johnson, the Chief Accounting Officer, and Jones to give us the financial updates for June.
Mr. Gross, it's not unusual at all for us to have the June financials presented a little later because that's the end of the year report, and so that's the situation again this year as we're waiting for all the final bills to come in. But Marjorie is going to give an overview of where we are at this point, where and the estimates that she has. But you will get a full packet with the June and July. We anticipate that you will get that have that for the August meeting. I'll just comment on a couple of things once Marjorie goes through. But Marjorie, if you would proceed with that.
Okay. Based on the preliminary reports that I've run, it appears that we're going to be able to make it through the fiscal year without having to tap into our rainy day funds after all, which is, considering where we've been the last couple of months, a huge undertaking. We're going to be cutting it close, and unless we get some large invoices come in at the last minute, it appears that we're going to finish on target with budget in spite of the impact of COVID-19. Preliminary reports for July show that we're tracking ahead of budget for the JIA amenities, and we're currently pacing about 75% of budget, and we're about 61% of the way through the month. However, keep in mind, when looking at those, that we budgeted for about a 25% decrease in revenues from July of 19 because of the unknown continuing impact from COVID-19. And even though we're coming in better than budget, we're still lingering a little bit behind July of 19. In your packets, though, we do have traffic counts on page 4 of the packet. You'll notice that for the month of June, the daily traffic counts were 51,147 vehicles, and annual pass traffic counts were 68,042 vehicles, for a total of 119,189 vehicles through the gates for the month. The total traffic count is 21,395 vehicles less than June of 19, which I think is about 15% reduction.
If I could comment on that, board members and Marjorie, what we're seeing on a daily basis, if you analyze each day, anywhere from about 15% to usually up to about 25%. Now, there are some outliers where we've been down as low as only 1% and as much as 35% on a given day. But usually, right now, we're seeing anywhere between a 15 and 22% daily decrease in traffic over last year. So when we look at that, knowing that leisure traffic has rebounded pretty steadily, we have to pretty much be certain that the differential has to do with the fact that we have absolutely no convention business on Jekyll Island at the present time. Also, we know that we are down as far as tour bus traffic is concerned, and also then we know that summer waves is limited with the COVID procedures to half of its capacity. And so we have actually, with our marketing department, actually pulled back on any kind of leisure promotion that would impact those facilities because they're basically operating at what is now considered capacity. So not every day for summer waves, but anyway, anywhere from about 15 to 22% is what we're tracking as far as being down.
Mm-hmm. And if you look at the graph on page 4, you can kind of see what the impact from COVID has been. You'll notice that, the months are generally pretty close to the prior year, but increasing. And in January and February, we were a little higher than last year. And then in March, you'll notice that orange line dropped significantly. And then in April, we hit a low of 40,000 cars through the gate for that month. And then in May and June, it's starting to come back up, which is really good. But based on the reports I saw on Monday, so far in July, we've had a little over 81,000 vehicles come through the gate. But traffic is still down overall 16% from last July. On page 5 and 6, you'll see the hotel occupancy reports for June. And in June, the hotel revenues were $5.1 million, which was $616,000 less than June of 19. That's a 10.8% decrease in revenues. The occupancy rate was 72.6%, which was lower than the 78.7% occupancy rate in June of 19. Revenue per available room was $145.70, which was less than the $173.76 RevPAR in June of last year. And the average daily rate was $200.62, which was less than the $221.91 reported in June of 19. If you look at the page 6, we'll give you the calendar year-to-date occupancy rates. And from that, we show that hotel revenues for the year was $16.4 million. which is significantly less than the $24 million from last year. So it's $7.8 million less, or 32% less in hotel revenues year to date. The occupancy rate is 54.5% compared to 69.5% in 2019. Revenue per available room is $87.11, which is less than the 2019 RevPAR of $125.77. The average daily rate is $159.86 compared to $180.96 in 2019.
If I could comment on that too, I want to remind board members that while technically the rooms are available, as far as the number of rooms that would be counted toward occupancy, we have internally, some of our hotels have decided on a ceiling of occupancy that is lower than 100%. And earlier in the pandemic, you'll remember during the month of May when things began to open back up, that everyone was in agreement, and we held across the board, even with the campground, to an agreed upon percentage. But that's after Memorial Day, that went away, and so individual hotels now are internally deciding on their occupancy based on providing comfort level, a certain comfort level and safety level to guests. So that's just one thing that I think is important for you to realize when you're looking at these numbers as well.
Mm-hmm. Is that all you have? Okay. If there's any questions on that, we'll be glad to answer those. If not, we'll move forward to the next item. We have a couple of capital items on the agenda. One of those is an emergency request for a manhole liner. Our wastewater staff noted a spike in the flow rates in around lift station 15, which is north of the Flash Foods. When they went out and inspected it, they found that 4 of the manholes are brick, and they've deteriorated to the point that the stormwater can infiltrate the system. And the staff determined that the most cost-effective way to repair the issue is to line the current manholes with a preformed fiberglass insert. And our staff will do the prep work and the installation, but the cost of the materials is about $4,000. So the staff requests an emergency capital expenditure from the water wastewater reserves of up to $4,000 for parts and materials to line the manholes.
Marjorie, do you need a motion on that?
Yes, sir.
Oh. Do we hear a motion?
So moved.
Who was that, please?
Bob Kruger.
And do we have a second?
Second, this is Trip. Second, Glenn.
Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
No, you need you need
No?
discussion. Any discussion? Is there any discussion? Chair hears none. So I had this further down on my agenda, but let's do a roll call vote.
Sure. Chairman Bill Gross?
Yes.
Mr. Joe Wilkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Bob Kruger?
I vote aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Mark Williams?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Tripp Tollison?
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans?
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, the second item we have on the list is a replacement of the Mistletoe HVAC system. In order to install the elevator at Mistletoe Cottage, the ductwork for the HVAC system had to be moved to make room for the elevator. And while our historic resources staff was overseeing that project, they discovered that there were several issues with the HVAC system. and that it needed to be replaced. So while they were in there working with the elevator, they went ahead and removed the 2 old systems and replaced it with a new 10-ton system that was installed. And so we are requesting approval for that capital expenditure from reserves of $19,500 for the replacement of the HVAC system. Yeah, I think that's ratification since it's already been done, correct?
So it would be a motion to ratify the purchase.
Okay.
And basically, this was done because it was an emergency situation. Noel, do you want to speak to that, please?
The old units were over 12 years old, so they were at the end of their life cycle.
And once you were in there, it just made sense to go ahead and
yeah, it was cheaper to go ahead and do it while they had it open and everything.
Marjorie, this is Bill. Do you want me to ask for a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay, do we have a motion to...
Yeah, this is Buster Evans. I make a motion to be approved.
All right. Do we have a second?
Bob Kruger, I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Do you want to have the roll call or just a
I would
sign
be
of
happy
yea and
to,
nay?
sir, if you'd like.
Okay.
Mr. Bill Gross.
Yes.
Mr. Joe Wilkinson.
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger.
Aye.
Commissioner Mark Williams.
Aye.
Mr. Tripp Tollison.
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Aye.
Sir, this vote is unanimous.
Okay, the next item we have on our list is the replacement of the fire alarm panels at the Beach Village. The fire alarm panels, as well as the sensors and strobes at the Beach Village shops, needs to be replaced. The systems are requiring more and more frequent repairs, and the replacement parts are getting very difficult to find. And our current alarm service provider has recommended that the panels be replaced as soon as possible. And they would like for us to use a common brand with a solid service life record. The cost of the equipment, installation, and the 3-year warranty on 3 new fire alarm panels and the associated equipment is $40,577.80. We're also requesting an additional $4,000 to cover any costs that might come up during the project that are outside the parameters of the quote, such as circuitry, conduit, and wiring. So the staff hereby request approval of capital funds to be paid from reserves in the amount of $44,577.80 for the replacement of the fire alarm panels in the Beach Village. That includes.
Okay, at this point.
Yes,
Do we have a motion? Do we have a motion for the replacement of the fire alarm panels at the Beach Village for the amount $41,000 as Marjorie discussed?
Bob Kruger, I'll move that we approve the capital funds in the amount of $44,577.80.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second, Glenn Willard.
Any discussion?
You know, I just have a question here. How old is our current alarm system?
This is Noel, Mr. Kruger, about 7 or 8 years old, and at the time they were installed, they were more than likely a model that was nearing the end of its life cycle, and that accelerated their demise.
Yeah, I thought, it just seemed to me that we were replacing this mighty quickly.
Yes, sir, I agree. But the system that was installed was probably a few years old before.
I understand.
What is the company what company's doing this?
Brewer.
Are
They're
they the same company that installed it?
Not originally, no, it is not. That company, I believe, has gone out of business, the original company.
Well, Mr. Kruger, just to give you a little comfort, I've got a separate fire alarm company that does my work, and they've been talking about how the fire panels are becoming obsolete. The technology and the replacement parts are hard to come by. So that validates what Marjorie gave us and Noel gave us as far as the reasoning behind replacement.
Oh, I understand. I'm voting for it.
Right.
I thought they would last longer.
Well,
I agree.
And Mr. Kruger, your question is a good one. More than likely, when the village was built and we were looking at value engineering, more than likely this is an item that our contractor was able to bring forward as an alternative that probably saved us money at the time. But obviously now it has to be replaced.
I'm fine with the explanations.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Michelle, would you like to do the roll call?
Thank you so much. Mr. Bill Gross?
Yes.
Mr. Joe Wilkinson?
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger?
Aye.
Commissioner Mark Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Tripp Towson?
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn Willard?
Aye.
This motion passes unanimously, sir.
Okay, the last item on our list is the FY21 Jekyll Island Airport grant acceptance, and I'm going to ask Noel Jensen to handle that for us.
On
Thank you,
page
Margaret.
10.
On January 1st, JIA staff received an announcement of a tentative allocation of federal funding for assistance in the amount of $343,668 for the following projects: rehabilitation of runway 18 and 36 lighting, displaced threshold markings on runway 36, and design of the runway safety area improvements. State funding participation is 50% of the eligible non-federal share of the projects, which amounts to $18,166. Due to the CARES Act, matching funds from the JIA are greatly reduced and are estimated to be about $1,500. Staff hereby requests acceptance of this federal funding assistance in the amount of $343,668, GDOT matching funds of $18,166, and the JIA contribution of $1,500 from reserves for completion of the projects listed above. And if I can elaborate, this is an ongoing effort in our capital improvement plan at the airport. Last year's project was a fuel farm and design of this lighting replacement on the airfield, as the year prior was remarking and the fence upgrades that were made at the airport. So this is just the next cycle in capital improvement that we're happy that the feds are giving us allocations to make big changes at the airport. And you might add, Noel, this is an unbelievable deal as far as $1,500 for us out of the total. Yes, sir. That's unusual for us to have such a small share.
Sounds good. So, Noel, you need a motion?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do we hear a motion for the grant funding for the airport from the Georgia Department of Transportation and the local shares as presented by Noel, $1,500?
So moved, Glenn Willard.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second by Buster Evans.
We have a motion and a second. Michelle, would you like to do the roll call?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bill Gross?
Yes.
Mr. Joe Wilkinson?
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger?
Aye.
Commissioner Mark Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Tripp Tollison?
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans?
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard?
Aye.
Chairman, this motion passes unanimously.
Right.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the Finance Committee meeting.
Thank you so much. Normally, this is just a comment reminder. Normally, the floor would now be open for public comment. However, due to the digital nature of this meeting, please take a moment to submit any public comments to the Jekyll Island Authority website on the Board of Directors page. And let's see, Dr. Evans, I don't see you with a report on human resources.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. No report this month.
All righty, then we will move ahead to the Marketing Committee. And Joy Birch-Meeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, Kate is going to update us with some marketing items as we continue in these uncharted territories. Kate?
Chair Meeks, this is Jones. If I could just, before Kate brings her report, if I could just be allowed just a moment to share with the board that this is the first meeting since we've done some realignments, as you and I talked about, Chair Meeks, within the marketing department in an effort to try and address some of the unusual situations that are now occurring as a result of COVID-19. Kate has agreed to be our Director of Strategic Partnerships to aggressively enhance our sales efforts. And she is going to share information with you there, but I think you'll quickly see why this has become a very important area for us to emphasize more greatly and more aggressively. And Alexa Orndorff, who has been with us, is going to assume the Director of Marketing and Communications and be responsible for our strategic communications and our promotional efforts. And just by realigning within our marketing department, we're convinced that we're going to be very successful in addressing our issues in a very, very appropriate way and with great success. So I appreciate your allowing me just to mention that, Madam Chairman, but I'll be glad to answer any questions, but if not, I'll turn it over to Kate.
Thank you, Jones.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Birch-Meeks, Mr. Hooks, and Mr. Chairman. This is Kate. I'm glad to come on the heels of the unbelievable airport deal, because what I'm going to show you in page 11 is definitely something that shows, as Mr. Hooks was saying, one of our significant challenges that we're facing now. We all know that the difference between 2019 and 2020 is certainly significant. You'll see how that flip went from leads in the pipeline to cancellations, with groups that had pushed out to the summer deciding that they could not move ahead. As we heard from Marjorie on the hotel side, a lot of those bookings have come back through leisure, through the week, at the capacity they want, quite strong. However, the real impact is most strongly felt on the convention center and our business there, which of course has been a very important mainstay. You can see here 110 events lost, resulting in over $3 million in lost revenue. So that is pretty sobering. So that leads us to say, okay, what are we are meeting the challenges. What are we going to do in this environment? So I'm happy to move you ahead to page 12, where I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of these specific efforts. So coming out of a site visit we had with Gail, one of our great partners, they said, wow, I wish we could get more people. We had set up the convention center to really depict what that experience is like. You know, we would like to have our people be able to see it and feel it because we've never done this before. We want to be able to make the right decision. So we created this Meet Safely video, which due to our technical limitations, I'm going to just show you some highlights here. You can see it on jekyllisland.com/meetsafely, and the URL to download it and share it is at the end. But we needed to show kind of exactly what that looks like, what we're doing. If you go to page 13, you know, it demonstrates our commitment. We developed it very quickly. We wanted to get it out to people right away, and it did go out at the beginning of July, and we've been using it since. On page 14, within that, we also picked out there are the elements of great service that remain. There is still the excellence in the experience that you have. On 15, though, you will see, yes, there are specific protocols. And, you know, we've all read the list of all the places that we visit, and it's important, and we need to know that. But it's also overwhelming. Well, what is that like? How can I visually see it? And, of course, with the medium of video, you can really understand and feel what it's like to be there. So that was very key. But at the same time, not to forget on page 16, even with all of this information, the promise, the appeal, the essence of gathering on Jekyll Island, the hotels waiting to welcome you remains the same. And there you'll see that URL if you want to share it. You'll see that we used this video and these other pieces in these, as Jones mentioned, these aggressive campaigns to go out to our people. This was emailed and personalized to everyone who was meeting on the books and deciding. It went out to our client database. It was shared with meeting planner organizations, our hotel partners, ownership, cold calls, everything used this, and also the extended resource page. On page 18, we do have some good news. We'll hear a little bit more about that shortly with Alexa, but we have some good news on the overall front, and then we also have meetings happening, and then the one attended by Governor Kemp recently. So we have taken those and amplified them, and then people in turn share them themselves, the people going to the meetings, the hotels, and then that really means something when you can see people saying, yes, I met here, this is how we did it, this is what it was like. So on page 19, looking ahead, yes, there's opportunity. It does look different. We have corporate groups that now literally need more space that are looking at things differently. Joan mentioned the bus tours had kind of halted. Well, they're starting to come back. We're hearing from the hotel partners that that is reviving. They're thinking about where to go. There are gatherings that are happening. Even companies that have virtual meetings are seeing that's not necessarily cheap. So they're looking at hybrid options, bringing people together. We're looking at facilities to see where else they could be used. And we're looking at places where trainings, for example, military, law enforcement, education that are happening, that do need to happen, that need space indoors and outdoors, and we're proactively reaching out there. I think that what's central to us when we're out there, however we are, is to remind people that the essential value of gathering remains. What happens when you gather in a place, and that, even with your mask on, you can see eye to eye, and even if you're 6 feet apart, there's value in those connections you make by being together. So I look forward to, taking on this opportunity with the great team that we have here, and I'm happy to answer any questions. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Kate, and I will jump in. As she noted, on the communication front, starting on page 20, you'll see a very recent accolade that was given by Travel and Leisure to the Golden Isles, which were named the top islands in the continental U.S., something we were very elated to find out in late June, and kind of worked behind the scenes with the CVB to produce some content to put out and make that recognition known to the public and to the community in the Golden Isles, who are certainly a part of making that accolade, contributing to us receiving that designation. And that was based on a number of factors. Travel and Leisure rated that based on natural attractions, the quality of our beaches, activities, friendliness of people, and really the overall value that's provided. They have around 6.7 million readers that provide that feedback that determines those ratings, and they're not influenced in any way by advertising, which is a really, a strong testament to the work that we do here on Jekyll. But one of the biggest points of distinction in this designation was a call out for Jekyll Island, which we've added here, and it's Jekyll Island earns devotees for its enchanting historic area, family-friendly vibe, there's a miniature golf course, and lauded beaches. Wrote one fan, so much to see and do. So it's a really great acknowledgement of our own efforts and contributions that we make to the Golden Isles, and with the impacts to travel, it's a very positive recognition on the heels of the 2019 Best Places to Go designation by Money Magazine, and certainly something we can all be proud of. And speaking of travel, on page 21, you may be aware of one of our recent Sea Turtle Center patients, Tsunami, very recently traveled to St. Louis. Tsunami was a long-term care patient at the Sea Turtle Center since 2017 that came to us due to a boat strike. And recently, we were excited to be able to send Tsunami to her forever home at the St. Louis Aquarium, and received a lot of positive coverage on that. From really Louisiana, Tennessee, New York, a lot of people were very excited to talk about this story of Tsunami and her journey. And even as of this week, we have learned that Quasimodo, the other long-term care patient at the Georgia Sea Turtle Center, has actually been approved to fly to St. Louis and join Tsunami as her tank mate and maybe even best friend. So something that, with everything going on in the world, it's certainly a positive piece of news coverage to receive, and really something that puts a smile on people's faces. And again, as we're kind of looking at limiting our spending and advertising dollars, it's important for us to really look at what kind of public relations and PR efforts we can get out there that will contribute to that overall publicity value. On the digital front, on page 22, we've been working kind of behind the scenes to have a greater push in the digital space, and working diligently to really find efficiencies in increasing our revenue, and one of those being really in the e-commerce space. Our digital content manager has been working over the last few weeks to really get out a refreshed look and feel of our e-commerce site, which includes our online retail shop. This is something that we were really excited to kind of roll out with everything going on, with more people making purchases online, just looking for ways in which we can kind of increase that revenue, as I mentioned, and really offer things that we haven't been able to offer before, some of which even being, for example, this highly requested front license plate that mimics the one that you can currently buy in the state of Georgia. We have a lot of visitors to the Sea Turtle Center who come from afar and want to be able to have that and show that on their vehicles and have that same kind of connection to the center. So we're excited to be able to roll that out. And of course, in turn, we've enhanced the navigation and made it much, much easier for people to be able to make a donation with every purchase to a cause that they feel connected to Jekyll. That can be the Georgia Sea Turtle Center, it can be our conservation efforts, or it can be our historic preservation and the mosaic. So just another way really to kind of connect visitors near and far to the work that we're doing here on the island. As a part of that e-commerce growth, we have also rolled out online ticket sales for more of our programming, and on page 23, you'll see we talk a little bit about how we've increased efficiencies for those ticket sales. We have, it's given us the ability to better forecast with our occupancy and safety needs that we've kind of rolled out at many of our facilities. We can better estimate the number of people that are going to come to our facilities. We can manage our ticket sales, and we can plan for the future. So we've been rolling those out across a lot of our programs, from conservation to the mosaic. And one that we brought online for the first time this year is Summer Waves. And as such, we saw nearly $20,000 in sales in the first 4 days of going online. And cabanas have been sold out daily since we've been open. So again, another positive success with everything going on. It's important to us that we're looking for those efficiencies and ways to increase revenue outside of what we've historically done. So excited to be able to see those things kind of go live and be online. And really that segues into kind of the larger marketing snapshot on page 24. We've shared this as an opportunity to really show the positive organic growth that we're experiencing. We're seeing an uptick in people wanting to stay on our website and learn more about what's going on, where we experienced an increase in about 17,000 subscribers to our email newsletter, and we're seeing a higher open rate than both our competitive set as well as previous JIA emails. So we know more and more people are looking for information on activities, experiences, and really just wanting to stay informed of everything that's happening on the island. And really, as Jones mentioned, leisure travel is seeing a quicker rebound than what we're experiencing with that group business, and the uncertainty around when that's going to really return to our convention center in the immediate future is making leisure travel that much more important for us, and a strong focus as we increase visitation while managing the health and safety of those visitors through our marketing. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but if not, I will turn it over to our marketing chair, Ms. Joy Burke-Schmeeks.
Thank you, Alexa. Thank you, Kate. Indeed, some positive news in the midst of these challenging times. Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that Kate and Alexa continue to remind us of the value of the marketing department and how they and their team continue to evolve and meet the challenges. I think we could do everything right on Jekyll, but unless we tell the public and continue to tell the public, remind them about Jekyll and remind them that it's a safe option, then everything else would be for naught. So continue to applaud this team and their hard work and this positive news this morning. And that concludes our report.
Thank you so much. Did I hear the slogan, so much to see and do?
You did hear, yes, you did hear so much to do and see. That was a quote from someone who provided feedback that contributed to the travel and leisure designation.
Oh, good. I was just going to say, of course, I was affiliated with the Callaway Gardens, and we had a similar slogan back in the, I guess, 1960s. But it was a little girl had written to thank the Callaways, and she said, there's just so much to see and do. But I won't imagine that's now in the public domain, except we've got it, which is great. All right, and if we're finished with that, Joy, I'll move on. Just a reminder, any public comments should be submitted online, and I'll go to the Legislative Committee. Trip.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a very quick report. As you know, they finished on June the 26th, and the three big items I think that the legislative session was able to accomplish, of course, is the budget under these crazy times, just short of $26 billion budget. Then, of course, the hate crimes legislation that was signed by the governor the last day of the session, and then the safe harbor legislative accomplishments, which protects businesses, small businesses, from frivolous lawsuits associated with COVID-19. That also passed, and that has a sunset provision July 14th, 2021. But that was good news as well. There's some tax incentives, economic development incentives that were thrown in there at the last minute that didn't pass, which I think we need to pay attention to going into the next session. And I'll obviously be talking to the chairman and Jones about that, what the JIA can do to be better positioned to work on that. And of course, the short-term rental legislative efforts that dealt with, or at least tried to deal with, taxes and local jurisdictions control and things of that nature on short-term rentals. So I think that'll come back up next year, so we need to pay attention to that as well. And then the last one is the Heritage Preserve properties, which is near and dear to my heart, but I'm glad that didn't really work out this session, and I think that'll come back as well. But any questions, Mr. Chairman? I'm just glad that they were able to get back and quickly do the business, and we'll be paying attention to whatever comes up this fall that they want to accomplish next session.
Great.
Any questions, sir?
Chairman Thompson. Hey, it's Commissioner Williams. Another one of note, through the budget and through legislation, historic preservation, which was a small division in DNR, about 22 people, has been moved to DCA. In consultation with the governor's office, OPB, DCA, and DNR, we felt like that was the best home for it. DCA, Department of Community Affairs, oversees almost all of the local grants that towns and cities apply for. HPD was sort of an outlier. They would do all their work at DCA and then have to come to us if it was a historic project. So in an effort, the governor's policy to streamline government, we all thought that was a good move. So I know that Jekyll, the historic department, does a lot of work with, used to do a lot of work with our HPD department. Now it will be at Department of Community Affairs. It'd be the same people, same faces, just under a different umbrella. So I know we do a lot of work with them at Jekyll, so just wanted to note that.
Thank you. Once again, public comments may be submitted online. And if we're ready, we'll go to the Committee of the Whole. And we will begin it with the new floodplain ratings. Noel, I believe you're going to brief us on this.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The National Flood Insurance Program has a community rating service, which is a voluntary program for recognizing and encouraging community floodplain management activities that exceed the minimum NFIP standards. Under the CRS, flood insurance premium rates are discounted to reward community actions that meet three goals: reduce flood damage to insurable property, strengthen and support the insurance aspects of the NFIP, and encourage a comprehensive approach to floodplain management. The CRS uses a class rating system that is similar to fire insurance rating systems. CRS classes are rated from 9 to 1. Most communities enter the classes at 9, and they move up from there towards 1. Each class step represents a 5% discount on the insured's insurance premium. There are currently 1,509 communities that participate, and we are happy to be one of them. 17 of those 1,509 communities are rated Class 4 or better. We just received our results, and we have made gains towards Class 4, but we're rated as a Class 5. A Class 5 results in a 25% discount to an insured's flood insurance policy. So that's a pretty substantial discount to your flood insurance if you're a homeowner or a property owner on Jekyll Island. In contrast, Glenn County just last year moved from a 7 to a 6, so they're on our heels, and we like staying ahead of them. So we had a meeting yesterday to try to figure out how to close the gap. We need 322 more points to become a 4, and we believe we've identified some areas that we can extend our reach into Class 4. I'd like to give some credit where credit is due. Yank Moore and Reed Trawick led the charge on this project, and they deserve a lot of credit for the amount of work that they put into it. Yank with the Conservation Department and the floodplain management, and Reed Trawick, who is our fire marshal, who doubles as our floodplain manager, and he does a good job keeping up with all the paperwork that's required to submit this. There's a 5-year cycle visit with a yearly self-update, so we'll do the yearly update this November and submit it to them, and then usually in January we get the results, but with COVID it took them a while to get the results out. But I think that's good news for the landowners and homeowners on Jekyll Island and their insurance being discounted 25%.
Great. Thank you. Noel and Melissa, I do not believe the board needs to take any action on this, do we?
No, sir. Just information.
Okay, good. Good, thank you. Next, speaking of Melissa, Counselor, Larry's Giant Subs lease agreement.
Yes, sir. This is Melissa. Before you, as my first item, is a rental agreement with Larry's Giant Subs, who is the concession provider at Summer Waves. They have been our concessionaire since 2002 at the water park, and this is a renewal of the previous lease. The term is until December of 2024 with 2 extension terms until 2028 with the same terms and conditions. There is not a change in any rent calculation. It is based on percentage sales, which step up per increase in sales. Water and sewer fees are included in the rent, so there's not a separate charge for those. All other utilities are billed at a rate of 2% of gross sales per month, and trash removal is at Summer Waves' expense. Is at Larry's expense. We did beef up in the lease some of the maintenance and repair responsibilities. Tenant is responsible for most fixtures except for the HVAC system and the hot water heater, and some of the what Mr. Jensen calls the 4 walls, which is the roof, the wall system, the electrical system, low voltage system, things behind the walls. The other things to take note of in this lease are the prices for the Larry's items are to be within 10% of the Larry's Giant Subs in Brunswick to make it competitive. And should Mr. Sharp, who is the current general manager of Larry's Giant Subs, no longer operate as the general manager, the authority has the option to terminate this agreement. That is not saying we will or we must, but we do have the option. We like Mr. Sharp. And Mr. Sharp has entered into a personal guarantee. You have 3 possible actions you can take. You can deny approval, you can approve it, or you can suggest other alternatives. Staff recommends approval of this rental contract.
Okay, and that is going to require a motion. Is there a motion to recommend approval of the Larry's Giant Subs rental agreement as recommended by staff?
This is Bill.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you. I need a second.
Bob Krieger, I second.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? Chair hears none. I'd like to do a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Joe Wilkinson, Chair.
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger.
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross.
Yes.
Commissioner Mark Williams.
Yes.
Miss Joy Birch-Meeks.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Tripp Tollison.
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans.
Yes.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Aye.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Yes.
Chairman, this vote passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is
yes.
Mark. I've got to get on another foundation meeting and vote. So, Michelle, I'm going to get off this call so you won't need to call my name. I assume we still have a quorum.
Yes, sir, we do. Thank you.
Thank you,
Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Commissioner Williams is talking about the Georgia Department of Natural Resources Foundation.
Thank you. Next would be the Lighthouse Trolleys lease agreement. Counselor, I need you to discuss this.
Yes, sir. This is another rental contract with Lighthouse Trolleys. They operate a trolley, a private trolley. It's not any one of the authority's trolleys, and they do tours, various tours around the island. I think they pick up from one of the hotels on the island. They also pick up from other various locations, and in fact, the authority sometimes contracts with Lighthouse Trolleys for our own purposes. And they would like to be able to park their trolleys at the parking lot in front of the Morgan Center. So we have carved out 4 spaces for I think they're going to park 2 trolleys, one to 2 trolleys there, and those will be reserved for them to park there. This is a term for 2 years plus an additional 2-year term renewal subject to mutual renegotiation of terms. The rent, Lighthouse Trolleys has agreed that the rent will be retroactive to May 11th, which is when we began in earnest negotiating this, and that is something that they offered. The base rent is $2,660.04 a year. That is in addition to percentage rate for tours that originate on the island, which includes tours originating on online sales, is 3%. Tours that originate off island, which are things like if they load up on St. Simon's or in the Winn-Dixie parking lot in Brunswick, then come over. That would be a tour that originates off the island. That is a percentage rent of 1%. The Lighthouse Trolleys cannot conduct business at the 4 rental spots, 4 parking spaces that they are storing their trolleys on. They can't block any vehicular or pedestrian traffic. We are not allowing them to conduct any business at the Mosaic Museum unless we specifically authorize it, so as not to compete with our own historic tours that we do. And the tenant may not use any mark of the authority, trademarks, or other types of wording that we use. And tenant must carry insurance. That's a basic summary of it. You have 3 options to deny approval of the rental contract, approve it, or suggest other alternatives. Staff recommends that you approve the rental contract with Lighthouse Trolleys. Well, it's actually technically the Findig company doing business as Lighthouse Trolleys.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add to what Melissa just said, this is Jones. This is very, very significant. We have been internally talking for some time, several years now actually, about how we could go about getting revenues from tour operators that were utilizing the resources of Jekyll Island, conducting tours, but yet weren't part of the Jekyll Island Authority tours and were actually not engaged on the island as far as space or rental space or facilities. And so I really commend Melissa for taking this and running with it and coming forward with a good solution here where we will have actually the 4 parking spaces become very significant into this entire equation as far as allowing this to happen. But hopefully this will become our model as far as the way we then go about working with other tour vendors who come onto the island, who historically have come onto the island and conducted tours, and we've actually not seen any revenues from. Mr. Findig was very cooperative throughout the process, and so I just wanted to bring that forward, Mr. Chairman, that this is more significant than just a simple lease.
Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to need a motion to recommend approval of the Lighthouse Trolleys rental agreement as recommended by staff. I need a motion.
This is Bill Gross. So moved.
Thank you. I need a second.
Bob Kruger, I second.
Thank you. And any discussion? Okay, I want to do a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Mr. Joseph Wilkinson?
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger?
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross?
Yes.
Miss Joy Birch Meeks?
Aye.
Mr. Trip Tollison?
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans?
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Aye.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Yes.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Yes.
Thank you. Of those present, the vote is unanimous.
Thank you. The next is the Jekyll Island Marina assignment of lease and assignment of easement. Counselor?
Yes, sir. This is, we brought before you last month, I believe, a discussion that the marina was looking to be purchased by Zachary and Stephanie Gilbert, who are now doing business as Tylen's Marine Corp. This is the Jekyll Island Marina on the south end of the island. In April of 2020, you voted to decline the authority's right to purchase the marina for the purchase price of $3,050,000, as you had the authority to do pursuant to the lease. We are still waiting approval of the Gilbert's bank loan, but assuming that goes through, the Gilberts have passed the authority's background check and credit references. On June 15th, Mr. Hooks, myself, and Maria Humphrey, our JIA leasing manager, and Mr. Blue, who is one of the two current owners of the marina, met with the Gilberts to discuss their plans. And we are, excited about the direction that they are going to move in. In order for them to move in that direction, there are three things before you to be considered. The first thing is the assignment of the current lease from Jekyll Island Marina Incorporated to Tidelands Marine Incorporated. That is what kickstarts everything else. And then it will be the assignment from Jekyll Island Marina to Tidelands Marine of the joint and reciprocal easement of Harbor Road with the moorings. And then finally, we have drafted for your review and approval a second revised and restated lease with Tidelands Marine. Looking into all this, we looked at the old lease, which was, I think, decades old. And it needed to be beefed up. We needed to put some things in there, which I'll go into. And that's why we, instead of just doing an amendment to the lease, we just decided to do a second revised and restated lease if you approve it. That lease has some terms that I'll make you aware of. The lease term will be until March 31st of 2056, but they'll have two 10-year lease periods subject to mutual renegotiation of all the terms. The use of the premises, the general use of the premises are the same, including Maria, restaurant, ship store, etc. Two things that came before the authorities, the staff members in the meeting, was that the new marina owners will not allow vessels that don't have a seaworthy hull. That's a problem that I'm sure y'all are aware of, that many marinas and wharfs have, and in fact the city of Brunswick had that several years ago. If they're not seaworthy, they are just going to sit there. They're more likely to sink, and who's going to pay for that to get it out? Liability issues. Yeah, a lot of liability issues. So that was, that's a very important part of going forward with this marina. The other issue is that liveaboard vessels may not be sublet by the owner for any purpose, including rental activities for profit, such as these online rental companies like Airbnb or VRBO. And
thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you. That was at the request of the lessee. The monthly base rent, it is staying the same as what it is now. It's $2,180.50, which includes base rent and a flat rent in lieu of percentage rent for fuel cells. There will be an annual CPI adjustment, which is at least 3%, but no more than 15%. And in addition, there's a percentage rent of 3% of total monthly gross income, which of course excludes fuel sales. There is a security deposit, which is 1.5 times the annual base rent. And there's a little hitch to that. We'll get to it kind of later, but we're asking them to install a automatic fire sprinkler system, which is required under the international code for safety reasons, but it's a very expensive undertaking. So we have agreed to return 6 months of security deposits upon their installation and the approval of the fire sprinkler system.
And that would be, board members, that would be in the dry boat storage areas where that sprinkler system would be. They are required to carry significantly more insurance than the current owners do. We felt that was important. And the utilities, they are responsible for basically all of the utilities and services. The capital expenditures is another thing I'd like to call your attention to. They are required now to maintain a capital expenditure reserve account, which they will deposit into monthly in an amount equal to 2.5% of the previous month's grossly income. And annually, they are required to spend 2.5% of the previous year's gross monthly income on capital expenditures. And we'll get through what some of those capital expenditures in the next couple of years are going to look like. The rates, again, similar to Larry's Giant Subs, shall not exceed those prevailing in comparable operations within a 75-mile radius of Jekyll Island. Quality standards, we've added in a new provision that the authority may contract with an independent evaluation company to evaluate all aspects of lessee's operations. This is to make sure that all our businesses are maintaining standards of a first-class resort island. The capital improvements to be completed by the Marina by the second anniversary of the effective date, so within 2 years, they'll install trash and recycling compactors. In their dry boat storage, they'll install an automatic fire alarm system, a knockbox, and in the dock area, they'll install fire extinguishers and reconfigure existing ones and repair and improve standpipe systems. By January 31st, 2023, they'll install that automatic fire sprinkler system in the dry boat storage area that we talked about previously. So before you today, you can deny this purchase of the Marina by the Gilberts. You would do that by not consenting to the assignment and assumption of the lease agreement, which renders action on the other documents moot. You could approve the sale of the Marina to Tidelands Marine by first consenting to the assignment and assumption of the lease agreement and consenting to the joint and reciprocal easement agreement, assignment of the joint and reciprocal easement agreement, and second, by approving the second revised and restated lease for the Jekyll Island Marina. So that's 2 separate votes, or you can suggest other alternatives. Approving the sale is recommended by staff.
Good. Is there a motion to recommend approval of the Jekyll Island Marina assignment of lease and assignment of joint and reciprocal easement pending loan approval and the closing of the sale as recommended by staff? I need a motion.
Kruger, I so move.
Is there a second?
This is Bill. I second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Mr. Joe Wilkinson?
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger?
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross?
Yes.
Ms. Joy Birch Meeks?
Aye.
Mr. Tripp Tullison?
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Aye.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Aye.
Of those voting, we have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. The next one, Counselor, do you need to do any more on the Jekyll Island Marina revised lease, or do you think we can move?
No, sir, we need to vote on your recommendation to accept the Marina's second revised and restated lease. Y'all just approved the assignment of the lease and the assignment of the easement.
Okay, so this is the revised lease that we're going to approve?
Correct.
Okay, then I need a motion to recommend approval of the Jekyll Island Marina second revised and restated lease, pending loan approval and the closing of the sale as recommended by staff. I need a motion.
This is
Bill Gross.
Evans,
I make the motion.
Approve.
And I need a second, please.
Second, Glenn Willard.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, I'm going to call for a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Mr. Joe Wilkinson.
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger.
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross.
Aye.
Ms. Joy Birch Meeks.
Aye.
Mr. Tripp Tollison.
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Aye.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Aye.
Of the people voting and present, it is unanimous.
Thank you. The next is the amendment to the lease. Counselor, do I need to do that? Or do I need a motion?
I can present it to you. This is
That'd be
amendment
great.
to the lease of the Moorings. So we're done with the Marina, and we're moving next door to the Moorings.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. This is before you because the developer has approached us and asked for an extension, basically to move out their rent due dates. So you'll recall that last month you voted to extend the substantial completion dates for the project infrastructure and for the residential units for the Moorings due to COVID-19 issues by 6 months. And then until the residential units begin selling, generally the annual base rent for the project is $13,712.98 per month. However, written into the lease is in consideration of the expenditures incurred by lessee before and during the design phase of the project, the first 6 months of rent is deferred. And this 6-month deferment expired May 21st of this year. Beginning May 21st until December 2020, the annual base rent is due. Beginning January 2021 or upon the sale of the first condo, whichever occurs first, the developer begins paying back the first 6 months rent deferment in addition to the base rent then due and owing until the deferment is recouped by the authority. Like I said, due to the construction being stalled, the developer has requested an amendment to the lease to provide for an additional 6 months of rent deferment. This would extend all the rental timelines out by 6 months as set forth in the memo to you. And I've kind of put out those times in there. I'd be happy to go through it, but they are in your memo in your packet.
Good.
It's very important, board members, one of the items that Melissa just went over is that there's no forgiveness of rent here. The lease payments still are to be paid. They're just picked up at the end of the deferred period.
Correct.
Thank you.
So there are, yes, sir. So there are possible board actions. are to vote to amend the ground lease to extend the rental due date that's set forth above. And I'm also asking to allow the executive director to sign an amended lease as appropriate to effectuate such extension and as approved by the attorneys for the lessee and the authority, as we do not have a current amendment drafted as of today. You can also do nothing or suggest other alternatives. And staff recommends action number 1 if you wish to extend, your board packet is wrong. If you wish to extend the rental due dates as set forth.
Okay. So is there a motion to recommend approval of the moorings at Jekyll Harbor amendment to lease as recommended by staff? I need a motion.
Bob Kruger, I so move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Glenn Willard.
Bill Gross.
Great. Any discussion? Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Mr. Joe Wilkinson?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Bob Kruger?
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross?
Aye.
Ms. Joy Birch Meeks?
Aye.
Mr. Trip Tullison?
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans?
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard?
Aye.
Mr. Dale Atkins?
Aye.
Of those present, it is unanimous.
Thank you. Do we now go to Jones's report?
Yes, sir.
Executive Director's report. Jones Hooks.
Mr. Chairman, I'll try and be very brief. I do have 6 items I would like to bring to your attention. First of all, I want to reiterate for all board members as well as the public that all JIA employees have been given face masks and they are instructed to wear them when encountering the public, whether inside or outside. We have reiterated that to all employees and to our contractors, and that employees must also, or face masks must also be worn in JIA facilities, including all common areas, halls, and meeting rooms. I also want to assure the board members that we are operating under reduced capacities, as I've already discussed earlier for instance, at Summer Waves, but also those same 50% capacity rules are in effect in the historic district. So none of our trolleys are going out with more than 50% of the seats filled, and only persons within a family unit or a friendship unit are being seated together. There is social distancing spacing being utilized, so it's very important for everyone to know that we are executing those requirements. It's important when we talk about Summer Waves. I want to give you an example. The capacity of the park is 3,500 per day. And on July the 4th, which was our busiest day thus far this summer, we had 1,515 guests. And just yesterday, July the 20th, we had a peak number of guests of 870. So we are absolutely much less than capacity would allow. Related JIA amenities are all back operating. However, some of our programs and activities have been canceled and reformatted as a result of COVID-19. And this may include hours of operation. It may include some of our tours being canceled or realigned. I am pleased to note that for the first time ever, that we have regularly scheduled tours of Hollyborn Cottage open to the public now on a daily basis, every day at 1 and 2. So we are looking at additional programming as well as how we have to realign some of our programming based on availability of staff. I also wanted to bring forward to the board that our new gate operations have now been in service for several weeks, and the number of complaints is marginal. And we are very pleased with the reporting that we have as far as the additional data that we're going to be able to secure, and we have tried to continue to push out information to guests, visitors, as well as residents regarding the operation of the gates and also the purchasing online of renewals as well as new passes. And the processing in place, the new processors are definitely faster, and I think anyone going through the gates will realize that the gates are much faster as well. So we're feeling very good about where we are with the new gate operations. Unfortunately, if you happen to be on the causeway heading onto the island between about 10:30 and 2 o'clock on a Saturday, it doesn't much matter whether the gates are operating or not, because just sheer capacity, volume of traffic has been backing up our processing. We have actually on Saturdays been not even utilizing the gates and utilizing persons in place to move cars through, but it's just the sheer number of volume. And that has not been unique to Jekyll Island. Our marketing department has done exploration there, and other areas with a causeway, such as Tybee and Hilton Head, have experienced those same capacity issues during Saturdays as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our golf course master plan was put on hold during the COVID-19 pandemic. We are trying now to move that forward and having some analysis work done by the Blakely Advisory Group as far as economic feasibility analysis, and we are hopeful that within the executive orders that we'll be able to go ahead and schedule another public meeting sometime during August, and then hopefully move the master plan to completion with a final presentation before the board by at least September. We obviously would want that to be an in-person presentation. Also, the Marriott Courtyard Residence Inn has been topped out. If you pass by that property, that facility under construction, you'll see a tree that has been placed on the top of the facility, which is in celebration of the highest point of the building being completed, and the evergreen does symbolize good luck and prosperity for the future occupants of the building. Also, Mr. Chairman, one last thing I wanted you to know, I am engaged, have been engaged and continued engagement with ASM, which is the new merged company of SMG, our convention center operator, talking to them about the serious situation we're facing without having convention business at the center. And so we're looking for some kind of cooperative response from ASM. Let me note that the vice president in charge of conventions for ASM indicated to me during our last conversation that they have increased their sales presence nationally during the pandemic to make certain that ASM facilities are top of mind when folks do begin having conventions again. And I thought this was an affirmation of what we're doing within our marketing team that we've already shared with you today, trying to make certain that we're out there and very aggressively marketing the facility. Additionally, one of the things that the representative from ASM indicated to me was that he feels like properties such as Jekyll Island that are newer facilities located in safe, clean areas that are away from big cities are going, and that do not require airline flights, are going to be the leaders in seeing meetings returned. He didn't think this was going to happen within 3 months, but hopefully within the next 6 months. So that was a good affirmation of our convention facility. Mr. Chairman, very quickly, that's all I have this morning unless there are questions.
Great. Thank you. I don't hear any questions. Okay, I'm now going to move to have the July 21st, 2020 board meeting of the Jekyll Island Authority in order. There is still a quorum. The first item is the adoption of the minutes of the June 16th, 2020 board meeting as presented. I need a motion. I need a motion to accept the minutes of June 16, 2020.
Bob Kruger.
Tripp, I'll make a motion.
And I need a second, please.
Bill Gross, second.
Second, Glenn Willard.
Thank you. Okay, is there any discussion? If there is no objection, I'm going to, is there any objection to adopting the minutes of the June 16, 2020 board meeting? Chair hears none. They are adopted. We need a motion to accept the minutes of the June 30th, 2020 board meeting as presented. I need a motion.
This is Tripp. I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Is there any objection to accepting the minutes of the June 30th, 2020 board meeting as presented? Chair hears none. They are adopted. We do have to have a vote on the manhole liners from the water wastewater reserves. The suggested motion language: board members have received a finance committee recommendation to approve the purchase of manhole liners from the water wastewater reserves. Is there any further discussion before a vote? Michelle, I want to do a roll call on this, please.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Joe Wilkinson.
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger.
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross.
Yes.
Miss Joy Birch Meeks.
Aye.
Mr. Tripp Tollison.
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Aye.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Aye.
Of those present, we have a unanimous vote.
Good, thank you. Then we move on to the Mistletoe Cottage HVA system from reserve funds. The board members have received a finance committee recommendation to approve Mistletoe Cottage HVAC system from reserve funds. Is there any further discussion before a vote?
Mr. Chairman, this is Melissa. Just to clarify, this is a ratification of a previous expenditure.
Thank you. So do we need any further discussion? Chair hears none. Once again, we're going to call for a vote. I will do a roll call.
Thank you. Mr. Joe Wilkinson.
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger.
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross.
Aye.
Miss Joy Birch Meeks.
Aye.
Mr. Tripp Tollison.
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Aye.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Aye.
Of those present, it is unanimous.
Thank you. The next is the replacement of the fire alarm panels at the Beach Village. And board members have received a finance committee recommendation to approve replacement of fire alarm panels at the Beach Village. Is there any further discussion before a vote? No discussion. Once again, Michelle, let's do a roll call vote.
Thank you. Mr. Joe Wilkinson?
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger?
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross?
Aye.
Ms. Joy Birch Meeks?
Aye.
Mr. Tripp Tullison?
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans?
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard?
Aye.
Mr. Dale Atkins?
Aye.
Of those present, it is unanimous.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to the Jekyll Island Airport grant funding from Georgia Department of Transportation and local share monies. Board members have received a Finance Committee recommendation to approve Jekyll Island Airport grant funding from Georgia Department of Transportation and local share monies. Is there any further discussion before a vote? Chair hears none. I will do a roll call vote, please, Michelle.
Thank you. Mr. Joe Wilkinson?
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger?
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross?
Aye.
Ms. Joy Birch Meeks?
Aye.
Mr. Tripp Tullison?
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans?
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard?
Aye.
Mr. Dale Atkins?
Aye.
Of those participating here today, the vote is unanimous.
Thank you. And we're going to Larry's Giant Subs lease agreement. Board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to approve Larry's Giant Subs rental agreement. Is there any further discussion before a vote?
Mr. Chairman, this is Bill
none.
Gross.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I hate that I've got to jump off this conference call. I've just got a situation. Can you still conduct business with a quorum?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you. I understand.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
All right. We're going to call for the vote, and I'll do roll call, please.
Thank you. Mr. Joe Wilkinson?
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross? I'm sorry. Mr. Bob Kruger?
Aye.
Ms. Joy Birch Meeks?
Aye.
Mr. Tripp Tullison?
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans? Dr. Evans? Appears not to be on the call. Mr. Glenn Willard?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Dale Atkins?
Aye.
We still have a quorum, and the vote was unanimous of those participating.
Great. And as we'll move to the Lighthouse Trolleys lease agreement, board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to approve Lighthouse Trolleys rental agreement. Is there any further discussion before a vote? Chair hears none. Once again, roll call, please.
Thank you. Mr. Joe Wilkinson?
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger?
Aye.
Ms. Joy Birch Meeks?
Aye.
Mr. Tripp Tullison?
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans? Mr. Glenn Willard?
Aye.
Mr. Dale Atkins?
Aye.
Of those participating today, the vote is unanimous.
Thank you. The next, we received a committee of the whole recommendation to approve Jekyll Island Marina assignment of lease and assignment of joint and reciprocal easement pending loan approval and the closing of the sale. Is there any further discussion before a vote? Any discussion? None. Do a roll call, please, Michelle.
Thank you. Mr. Joe Wilkinson?
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger?
Aye.
Ms. Joy Birch Meeks?
Aye.
Mr. Tripp Tullison?
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard?
Aye.
Mr. Dale Atkins?
Aye.
Of those present, the vote is unanimous.
Thank you. Next, the Jekyll Island Marina revised lease. Board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to approve Jekyll Island Marina's second revised and restated lease, pending loan approval and the closing of the sale. Is there any further discussion before a vote? No further discussion. Roll call, please, Michelle.
Thank you. Mr. Joe Wilkinson.
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger.
Aye.
Ms. Joy Birchmeeks.
Aye.
Mr. Tripp Tollison.
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Aye.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Aye.
Of those present, the vote is unanimous.
Thank you. The board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to approve the Moorings at Jekyll Harbor amendment to lease. Is there any further discussion before a vote? No further discussion. Roll call, please.
Thank you. Mr. Joe Wilkinson.
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger.
Aye.
Ms. Joy Birchmeeks.
Aye.
Mr. Tripp Tollison.
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Aye.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Aye.
Of those present, the vote is unanimous.
Thank you. And now, is there a motion to adjourn?
Dale Atkins, I'll give you a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Glenn Willard.
Thank you. Is there any objection to the motion to adjourn? The chair hears none. We are adjourned. Thank you all very, very much.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Have a good day.